Hello, everyone, dear rental scale up friends. I'll let you stream in. So good to have you joining. I see you coming. There's already 30 of you in. Thank you so much for being here. It's our last webinar of the year, webinar, masterclass, however we call it. As usual, our goal is to bring you insights and actionable things you can do. And as you may know, today we'll be talking about Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, which obviously are three channels that you are probably very interested in hearing about. I have, I think, three or four slides. That's it. So it means that we're going to have a great conversation with two great speakers, and they will introduce themselves in a few minutes. So what I'm going to do again, as usual, we're going to be talking like a large topic, which is basically these big three, not only what's new with them, but as well how things are really changing in terms of market share, right? We've heard things, right? We heard things like in 2024, as you may know, like if you in the US, Verbo losing market share and then coming back. In Europe, you probably have seen as well Airbnb losing market share to Booking.com, which is maybe super surprising to US ears, to people in the US. So again, fascinating. We'll be talking how, again, it's very crucial, again, to prepare for 2025, that really you listen to what experts have to say today, because you really make sure you keep an eye on the market share of who's giving you bookings today, who was sending you bookings last quarter, and how about 2025? We talk about that. All right, we 1 minute in. No reason to make you wait. There's already like 80 of you. Thank you so much for being here. My 3, 4 slides, and then we go right into it. Um, if you've ever been to one of those things, you know how I'm struggling always to share my screen. I think I will never learn. All right, is it the right screen? I'm not showing my kids' photos this time. No, we're good. Um, what's happening? What's happening? Look at that. For some reason, I can't just share the slides. Oh, what happened? It should be very simple presenting, but the buttons have moved. Look at this. That's fantastic. Let's just scroll view and boom. No, so if you're representing Canva now, the button is down to the right, not up. I like this, it keeps you young. All right, so seriously speaking, Airbnb booking verbal. We talk about new rules, and new rules, not just like new features, not talking about regulations this time, although regulations may have an impact on what we'll be talking about today. Um, Thibaut, I'm your host here. I'll also be talking about a few things. As you may know, I'm the founder of Rental Scale Up, which is a short-term news website. We talk about things such as what the big OTAs, what they're up to. We share market data. We talk about new technology. Um, Here we also have Yuvika and Snigda, who are make up the team. And again, they're very, very instrumental in having this thing happening today. Can't be anything without my team. Thank you so much. And also happen to be the head of product marketing for Price Labs, the revenue management platform. We have a free newsletter every Wednesday, but you probably know that because you're attending this webinar. That was it for me. All right. So we have two speakers today, Tabitha and Annie. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna just like stop sharing and have each of them introduce herself, because I think it's way better to hear from each of them. So again, right, we have key data, dashboard, and next packs here in Rome. And let me stop sharing. Annie, do you want to get started and introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Tybalt, for having us here. Tabitha, it's nice to meet you. Haven't met you before. But I'm Annie Holcomb. I am the Director of Technical Supply Partnerships in the Americas for NextPacks. It's a leading global channel manager based in the Netherlands. So I'm excited to be here to talk about all things distribution. It's something I'm passionate about. Having come from property management and moved into distribution, I know how important this topic is, and this is the perfect time of year to take a look at your distribution and plan for the future.
Fantastic. Tabitha, how about you?
Hey everyone, I'm Tabitha. I'm over in Bend, Oregon. So right out my window, I am watching it dump snow, which we were not expecting today. So if you see me looking up, that's what's happening. I've been with Key Data for almost 3 years now. So if you're unfamiliar, We're a business intelligence and revenue management tool. So all day, every day, I am part of the business management team, and then I also help with our property management system partnerships. So I'm talking to property managers all day, hearing what's happening on the ground, talking about what's going to happen, discussing with our revenue managers every single day what the landscape looks like. So yeah, really excited to be here and share some of those data points with you guys.
Tabitha, Anis, thank you so much for being here. And obviously, right, you are in contact every day with property managers. And I think as property managers, you are attending this meeting. And just let us know in the chat, by the way, where are you right now? If you're a property manager, where are you based? How many properties you have? I know we do the drill every time, but I love knowing this. I think our guest speakers like to know this because it's also helping us talk about things. For example, as we know, like in Europe and US, market shares are different. And there's people I know. There's Dean McLucky. Hello, Dean from South Africa. I see Tom, Manchester. Hello to the UK. So please do let us know where you're based, maybe also how many properties you have. Jacob, Colorado Springs, 150 listings. Frederick is in Sweden. Hello. So good mix of Europe and US for the moment. Gail, oh Gail, hello Gail. Good to see you. Long time no see. I saw you last week in Paris. That's Gail. Fantastic. Gail, 35 apartments, Hawaii properties. Hello, Kara. All right, Alex, third, new project manager, but welcome to the family. All right, Fernando, 177. Hans, Villa for You, Netherlands, 1,800 listings. Wow, look at this. Netherlands in the room. I'm in Amsterdam right now, and he works for a Dutch company. Look at that. Go Netherlands. Go Orange. Ontario 160, New Orleans 6. All right, Algarve. All right, so thank you so much. Again, I will look at the comments as usual. And if you have questions, there's a Q&A section as well. So do ask questions to us. We'll try to pick up the questions as we go along. If not, we'll make sure we have 5 to 10 minutes in the end to answer your questions. But again, I just want to make sure it's interactive. You can see now we are we're really live. We really care about you. I'm going back to my slides for a minute just to quickly talk about the topics. There we go. All right. So, three big things today we'll be talking about. And so, Tabitha will start the session. We'll be talking about OTA market share, right? As we said, how it seems we always talk about the three big ones, Vrbo, Booking.com, Airbnb. Things change. Things change a lot in 2024 and are different in the US and from Europe. Let's talk about that. And also, I think Tabitha also kindly from Kileta, they managed also to give us some preview, looking at pacing data, what's happening in 2025 is different. So it's very, very important because things are not static. Speaking of which, and then Annie will take us through the need for diversification, sorry. Why it's important, of course, to be on these big channels and how different they are, understanding what you need to do. To make your property management company successful, and you may not need to do what your neighbor is doing because maybe your company is different. So we'll talk about that. And then I will go through a few things happening on Vrbo, Airbnb, Booking.com, new things happening and what they actually mean for you. Some things as usual may have an impact for you on what's going to happen on the platform. So we'll go over this. And that was my last slide. Look at this, fantastic. Tabitha, let's go ahead. So how about this? I tease people about changes in market share and numbers, key data. You're very well placed to be talking about this. So I'll leave you the floor.
Yeah, so I kind of created a narrative around it because we found that when we're just shoving numbers down people's throats, it doesn't always stick and we start to lose you. So we've kind of created a story around 2024 into 25. So like I said, I'm gonna try to keep it light on percentages and numbers because that's just a lot to digest, and instead really focus on the overall trends to be aware of and how they impact your short-term rental business. So we mentioned those three channels, but what I'm really going to analyze is four channels. So Airbnb, Vrbo, Booking.com, and your direct bookings. So although the direct bookings through your website aren't via an OTA, they are still relevant to the conversation. So Let's start by discussing shifts in 2024 and then expectations for 2025 in the US. And I'll get to Europe, I promise. So keep in mind, we define OTA market share by the percentage of guest check-ins. So throughout the US this year, Airbnb has remained the most utilized booking platform. So shouldn't be too much of a surprise. From 2023, Airbnb check-ins have increased by 2%. Booking.com also experienced a 1% increase in bookings. And then on the other hand, Vrbo and direct bookings decreased by 1% from 2023. So now let's better understand why Vrbo took a loss of market share, because I know that's a hot topic. So in Q3 and Q4 of 2023, Vrbo migrated to the Expedia platform. This platform migration affected listings, created complications with reservations. Again, something you guys all probably experienced in some way. So safe to say, property managers were spooked. They went elsewhere. And since then, Vrbo has made a steady recovery throughout 2024. We've got data to back that up. And in what we see for 25 is we expect them to continue the trend into the new year, making that recovery. Shifting gears to Europe, Booking.com has taken the market share from Airbnb. So although Airbnb followed behind by 8%, as we continue to measure market share by the number of guest check-ins, Vrbo activity has actually laid flat comparatively to what we saw in 23, and direct bookings have decreased in the last year by 1%. So really important to note that Booking.com's growth in Europe really has to do with the 10 years it's been in the industry. As we all know, Booking.com began solely as a listing site for hotels. And then over the last decade, they began introducing vacation rental listings as well. So what did this do? Booking.com, who already had that mature base of users, who already had all of this trust built into the system, began considering vacation rentals for their holiday. Booking.com introduced their trusted users, which I'm sure some of us were those, the whole new side of travel, vacationing in a short-term rental instead of a hotel. Hence why the platform has such a high popularity in Europe and continues to secure a large sector of the OTA market share in Europe. And then just I kind of want to expand on that demographic of Booking.com users. I want to mention how it's important to understand this demographic for all the OTAs you're listing your properties on. So typically we find that travelers who are more comfortable using an app prefer to book via Airbnb and Vrbo. The app is easy for them to navigate. It's readily available on their smartphones. Airbnb travelers tend to book more last minute and therefore have shorter booking windows. Their length of stay is typically shorter, and then the stays they're booking are usually smaller properties, although we are seeing Airbnb gaining traction with those larger units. So Vrbo typically has larger properties. It attracts longer booking windows and stays, but that landscape, the data suggests, is actually also changing. And then here's potentially a reason why. Property manager strategy via these OTAs has changed, and you don't need me to tell you that. To be safe, we're seeing property managers list their properties on all of the booking sources. We assume this is happening because no one wants to miss out on a potential booking. From my conversations with our revenue managers and others in the industry, this is a fine strategy. To dive even further into how to maximize your listings, you can consider the demographics we discussed just now to better understand who is booking on which OTA, and then adjust your cancellation terms, your rates, your length of stay requirements, all of that based on those findings. And then your biggest challenge and what should be your ultimate goal is to convert those guest bookings from the OTAs into direct bookings. And you can do that by providing, that unparalleled guest experience, the bulk of what you're doing every single day. But the last thing I'll say on this note right now is just really understanding, again, that demographic of the OTAs, where your strengths are in your portfolio and how to maximize on those. And then, of course, understanding what's your competition, how can you capitalize, knowing all this information.
Great. Thanks for sharing so much. And Tabitha, I got a couple of questions for you, right? So
Yeah.
So again, the market shares we talked about in US. So what you have the numbers by chance?
I can share those in a different, yeah, I can pull up the percentage. So we do it by guest check-ins. So let me
Mhm.
see if I can get those exact ones really quick.
Because it was great to hear you said basically like some lost share, but what was the
Yeah.
overall number for each market would be
So
fantastic.
yeah,
Probably.
so I can show I can't show you, but I can tell you really
Yeah.
quick. So again, we're doing the market share by the number of guest check-ins. That I just want to make that clear if that's how we're measuring that. So let's go with the states first. Sorry, I have like a huge graph in front of me, so I'm trying to find it in here.
Fine.
So let's see. In the states for 2024, Airbnb has 43% market share.
Mm,
Direct bookings are
43%.
43%, and then that's followed by direct bookings at 28%. Then you have Vrbo at 21%, and then you have Booking.com with 8%. So,
That's very interesting. And again, do let us know in the comments if you're in the US whether that's about what you're seeing as well, right? It's really, really important. So we had like Airbnb 43, then direct booking, so important to include that channel.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
we had you had Verbo. Is that how much you said Verbo?
Vrbo's at 21%. So it's gone down 1% from the previous year.
So they lost a point or of market share in a way, but knowing that in Q1 they really went down and managed to go back up. So
Yep.
overall, again, that's why it's very interesting to look at this. I love what you're sharing now, right? If you
Yeah.
look at just the data from 1 year to another, it looks like things are stable. And then this is
Yeah.
where you don't realize maybe that during one quarter you have one of the major channels going down. And that probably going to talk to what Andy's going to cover is like, if one of your channels go down for some reason, as you said, right? We all know that well, we don't know. It's not. I shouldn't say that. It's very like you all should all know. No, it's not true. As you explained earlier, right? That Verbo, as we all know, had been acquired by Expedia Group. Expedia Group's policy is to migrate all their tech under one roof, basically, to reuse the same technology all over, which makes their life easier, but not
Yeah.
usually necessarily the one of the users. So what happened basically, they did this. But the platform was not optimized for vacation rentals, for high type of properties. It happens. But so much so that, as you explained, they had to cut the marketing spend. They were not buying any keywords, any traffic. So when not only the site was not converting, on top of this, they're not sending traffic to this, which kind of makes sense because they would be losing money. But they made it up. So that's pretty impressive. I'm very impressed.
Yeah.
And what you're saying for 2025, you think things are pretty stable, right? Again.
Things are looking pretty stable. Yeah, so Vrbo is really making a recovery there. Airbnb, at least in the States, is continuing to keep that market share. Direct bookings is increasing. I mean, everybody knows the power of direct bookings. We're really trying, I mean, that's everybody's ultimate goal is to convert a guest into being a direct booker. So that's the trends we're seeing. I mean, and this goes all across the board. You know, what we're seeing in terms of occupancy levels, rates no one likes to hear this, but it's looking really familiar to 2024. It's just the nature of it. But of course, we have a lot of things in the US that might change that going into 25. We've got a new, the political landscape has changed. We're gonna see the impacts of that. We can make predictions. And I wish I could like whip out a crystal ball and tell you what's gonna happen, but we've got so much in the US that is riding on January. Um, and I mean, and like, let's think about like, the mountain markets, what kind of ski season are we going to see? And that's really going to, change what the traveler trends are going to look like in those peak mountain markets. So there's a lot we're keeping an eye on. I saw one comment in the chat that I just wanted to address was somebody said, this is not what I'm seeing. That can completely be true. I mean, remember, these are averages. We're looking at what a majority, but there are gonna be outliers. So, and then that's the case with absolutely everything. So the key there is just still looking at your competitors in the market, staying on top of your OTAs. So all of this is still going to be very relevant for you. You just might be in a really niche market. You might have a really niche properties. So that's going to kind of set you up little bit differently than what this is seeing. Do we want to touch on what that market share looks like in Europe,
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to
folks?
sort of give
Okay.
some context as well. Like
Yeah.
if you're in Europe, for example, if you're France, Verbo is not called Verbo, as you know, it's Abritel or it's Vevo in Germany. Right. So in Australia, it stays. So again, taking this into account, that's what we're talking about here, right? You Vrbo as a group of brands, not just Vrbo, obviously, which is very small in
Hmm.
Europe because they don't, I mean, they're just UK, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's look at the market share in Europe. So Booking.com controls 48% of that market share, followed by, and then, again, this is 2024. Airbnb controls 40%, and then direct bookings is 11%, with Vrbo only having 2%.
And again, that's very interesting because that's all over Europe. And obviously in countries like France, when Abritel, Vrbo is still a bit strong, the share would be different, right? It's exactly as
Yep.
Tabata explained, that's an average, but it's good to know. All
Yep.
right, any on your side, any reaction about this market share story before we go into your part?
No, I mean, I think, obviously key data has a lot of data that they can pull. And what's really great is that they have the actualized data so we can really see what's actually happening, not kind of like a prognostication of what a market should be. I think what it does highlight is that there is booking.com has a lot of room to grow in the US and they recognize that. And so I have a feeling going into next year, we're going to see a lot of aggressiveness with that channel. And I'll talk about that and like, why it's important to really make sure that you're having a multi-channel strategy and utilizing the channels to create something to fill in the holes and not necessarily just your peak times. But I think this data it's spot on from what we're hearing from our partners as well.
Well, that's great. And you said you would be talking about this. Why don't I leave you the floor, Annie, and just
Oh,
go over that straight away?
okay, okay. So, if anybody knows me, I'm pretty passionate about kind of just the diversification of channels. You absolutely want to have a direct strategy and you want to make sure that you have that in place. But a lot of people don't have the luxury of spending a lot of money on direct. You might only have 2 or 3 units, so you're not going to put a lot of money into marketing. So you want to utilize the channels, for your marketing and put that aside as a thought. But one thing that I try to tell people at this time of year, especially for markets that are very seasonal. Just I'll use beach markets as an example because I live in a beach market. This time of year you want to take stock in what happened this year and what you maybe could have done differently. One thing that I know happened along the Florida Panhandle, specifically a very small market but very important market, is the 30A corridor within the Florida Panhandle. That is a very high dollar destination, and they had the most incredible growth after COVID, and they kept seeing it, kept seeing it, kept seeing it. And I think a lot of the managers in that market got complacent, and a lot of owners were newer to the market and they were used to getting very high dollar rates. They didn't want to come off those rates. And so by the time the market needed correction, it was a little too late. They also had some factors in play about beach access and things that were out of their control, nothing that could have been foreseen at the time. But what that said to me was that, these people that have maybe been only a VRBO user or Vrbo user and only a direct, they didn't have another backup channel in play to be able to access more bookings, to access those last minute bookings. So take a look at your strategy. What does it look like? Do you have more than 2 channels? I would say you absolutely need to have more than 2 channels. And the reason being is you don't want to be beholden to one outside of your direct, but you also want to make sure that you can fill in gaps where you need them, last minute reservations, when you have cancellations. I mean, we all hate cancellations, but it happens. If you live in a beach market, you deal with hurricanes. And there's no more powerful tool to turn back on than one of the OTAs after a hurricane passes and your market is clear and everybody can come in. So take a look at what your market mix is. Take a look at what your goals are. Is your goal to drive just revenue? Then you may want to look at those channels that are going to drive a higher ADR. Key data can help you really drill into that and see what the ADRs are by channel. Also, length of stay, booking window. I mean, you really want to take a lot of those things into consideration and utilize the channels to again layer over what your guests are. Create a guest persona. What does that ideal guest look like? And there's an ideal guest for every day of the week and every month of the year. So it's not just one guest that you're driving for, and each channel can kind of help you with that. So take a look at your strategy and then take a look at what those channels can do to help bolster your strategy and create a plan that you can be prepared for. And if you think of your channels as sort of levers, within a toolbox, and you want to be able to pull those levers when necessary. I always use two examples. One is Whimstay. It's a really great channel for last minute bookings. That is solely their focus. They're not trying to get bookings 6 months out. They're trying to get bookings inside 28 days. So what they're going to do is they're going to only show availability in the markets for those 28 days. So if you have distressed inventory, you can put it out there, and that's what people are shopping for is specifically on that channel. So that's a customer that's willing to travel last minute. And they also are not a high commission channel. So you're not looking at the cost of acquisition for that channel to be high. Another one would be something like Homes and Villas or American Express, any of these niche channels that are driving loyalty guests. They're very loyal to that channel. They want their points. They want to use their points. They want to earn their points. So if you can get listed on those channels and utilize those, you're going to get a very, again, they're going to be loyal to that channel, but you're going to get a high value guest, someone who's looking to spend extra money, book a little further out. They want the nice things. They want the higher quality services, so they're willing to pay for more. So give that a consideration, and I would say, talk to your channel partners, talk to your distribution partners. So if you're using a channel manager like NextPax, we can talk to you about how to create basically a menu that you can order from whenever you need to, and to fill in the holes and create a strategy that will maintain you throughout the year, not just during peak. And one item I know I've seen a couple times in the chat with people talking about like direct bookings. If you're not running 100% occupancy, then you have room for OTAs. OTAs are not there to be your main strategy. They're there to supplement. And if people will think of it in that way, as they're your frenemy, they're there to be your friend. They have the same goals as you do. They're trying to sell rooms at the highest rate possible as often as possible. So think of it an aligned strategy and utilize that friendship, throughout the year. And sorry. Really, beyond that, I think that one of the things that I would say in sort of diversification that I've seen a couple again in the chat, a couple of people mention is the use of social media. So besides OTAs, I think that social media channels have become sort of a new niche channel to get bookings from. It really plays well in the STR market and a lot of these really cool hip markets where there's a lot of fun things going on, city markets urban markets where there is events. So think about putting that into your strategy. And also with your partnerships with your channels, think about what you are looking for out of that channel, and don't be afraid to ask them. They are often willing to create strategy and create promotional opportunities around a market. So if you are in a market that is, a beach market and it's off season, maybe you get other partners within the market to say like, hey, we want to do a promotion right now to get people to come for like just a quick, weekend hop from Atlanta to the Florida Panhandle. They'll put together some promotions for you to do that because again, they're looking to move rooms just like you are. So think of your channel partners as a marketing partner, not just somebody who's taking your rooms and distributing them, for the sake of making money. They're there to help you market your property and your destination.
I really like that you mentioning these other websites as well, these other platforms where you can book. Would you mind repeating them one by one? Because as I can see in the comments, people say, "Hey, what was the name of the last minute channel, the Whimstay?" And
Yeah,
so they just want to. So we talked about Whimstay. That was the last minute channel. We talked
yeah.
about
Marriott
home.
Homes and Villas. Yes.
So it's Marriott
Yeah,
Homes and
so
Villas. Yeah.
yeah. So Marriott Homes and Villas, and then you would talk about American Express. So again, like more loyalty type programs. But there's a lot of channels that have come on come on the scene that they're not going to rival Airbnb or VRBO or Booking.com anytime soon. But they are there to supplement. You've got Vacay My Way is one. You've got a lot of niche channels, and if anybody wants to message me, and I can kind of give you the channels that would be appropriate for your market, because again, there are hundreds and hundreds of channels, but they're not all necessarily right for your market. There's a lot of niche channels that are just specifically meant for Florida. Florida rentals, Florida a rental by owner. Like there's just a lot of Emerald Coast by owner is another one. A
Mm.
lot of channels that are very specific to a regional set, and we can help you kind of navigate through all of those.
Thanks so much. And a follow-up question for actually maybe for you and Tabitha, right? There was Sorab actually in a Q&A was asking, what do we mean by direct? And of course, direct can be many things, right? Direct is people going to your website and booking, can be people finding you on the OTAs and then going to your website, or finding you on Instagram or through your partners. And if I'm not mistaken, depending how we're counting things, it also could be people finding you on Google Vacation Rentals, which is the fourth big one we never mentioned, but because I do believe people find you in Google Vacation Rentals. So, this, if you type, villas in Miami Beach, for example, you condos, Miami Beach more, you will probably find this in your Google search result, this map with properties. And actually, that's from Google Vacation Rentals. If I'm not mistaken, if you click on this, you then will be redirected to your own website or maybe to your channel manager website. But anyway, so that and usually that counts as direct. Am I just checking with you, Annie and Tabitha, as far as you know, am I right to believe that it's counted in the direct most of the time? This Google Vacation Rentals.
From our perspective, there is, but I think it depends on the listing that they would click on because the OTAs are pulling through to Google as well. But the guest is going to know because they're going to see the pricing. So, Google operates kind of in that meta type space where they're going to give you the listing for the best prices for your property. But you do have the ability to list your property and have it linked back direct to your own website. So I would say that's another really important thing is that if you don't think you need a website, you're wrong. You need a website. You don't want to utilize one mistake I see quite often is people will send me the link to their website and it's a link to their Airbnb listing. And that's not your direct website. So all you're doing is actually putting your marketing effort and dollars into Airbnb, which, they love it. Absolutely. But you need a direct site too. You need to be able to have something to go back to your direct site to be able to have key data count for your direct bookings.
And one also goes with the other. I mean, we usually talk about the billboard effect, the fact that people find you on an OTA website. If you're smart enough, make it clear enough, you have your company name in your host profile, for example, so that people can Google and find you and hopefully book direct with you. But I don't know, these days also we have to think that some people actually just want to Google to find you, find your website as a trust signal and still book you, I don't know, on Airbnb, for example. And it's fine, even if your website is not used for direct booking, just as trust signal that you can be trusted, you can be professional. That's great. You're still getting the booking, even though from Airbnb, right? So indeed, so the website is a direct booking engine as well as a trust signal listening to like, yes, I'm a professional, which is very important for, of course, people listening to this today. Um, um, Maybe a segue. I want to go now into maybe what's new with different platforms. Speaking of talking about Airbnb, Booking, and Vrbo, but I think Annie, you have something about Booking.com, right? Because I think obviously with Nextpacks, you have pretty good relationships with Booking.com. So what's coming in 2025, Booking.com from your side that you guys are working on?
Yeah, so yeah, again, being a Dutch company, we're very close to Booking.com. We have a really great relationship with them. Our CTO sits on an advisory board with them. So we do a lot of work together to try to optimize our not just our partnership, but kind of like how property managers will utilize the channel. And I think the one thing that I've seen since I've been with NextPacks, but I was seeing it previously, is Booking.com's really listening. I mean, I think that they understand specifically for the US, it's inherently different than things are in Europe, and so there's some modifications and things that need to happen for property managers in the US to be comfortable using a channel that's not based in the US. So they're going to be working a lot on content, so a lot of how to handle that content and make sure it's optimized. Payments by booking is already in place, so a lot of people I know, were wary of using Booking.com because there was a concern of failed credit cards, fraud, that type of thing. So payments by booking is in play, and property managers can sign up and utilize that. So it plays similarly into they become basically the merchant of record. So it does give you a comfort that they're running the credit cards and they're verifying them before payment. So you don't have to worry about that being an issue. But they are going to be implementing some more APIs that'll have rate plans, like value adds for rate plans, and then market insights API. So some stuff that we'll be able to pull into our system from Booking.com for our partners. But even greater, and I mentioned this actually to Tybalt recently, we just completed a program called the Seamless Experience Accelerator. That's just an internal name with Booking.com. But what that allowed us to do was take some of those foundational functionalities from Booking.com and put it in our system. So instead of having to go into each single property to report a bad credit card or to report guest issues, to reconcile reservations, that type of thing. You can do it in our system, which is makes it one less system that you have to do. And it's all kind of rolled up in the dashboard within the NextPax platform. There are only a few other companies globally that have done this. It's something that I think Booking implemented this because they were hearing that there's a lot of friction in using the platform, so they wanted to remove that friction. So I think you're going to see a lot more of those type of functions coming from Booking and also from some of the other players. We're not seeing a big roadmap for Airbnb, but we all know they have their releases and they kind of hold their cards close to the vest as to what they're going to do. But I think overall it's going to be really focused on content and communication, and then where can we get kind of the data from the channels to understand guest behavior for each one of your property groupings and your market. So I think 2025 is really bright for all the OTAs. I'm seeing a very bright spot for Booking. I think that they are very focused on the US market and wanting to make that relationship with US property managers as strong as it is in the Europe market.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing these insights. And I agree with you about what they're going to do. And if I can now, and of course, again, as usual, I will now take the lead to talk about what we see coming up on these different platforms. But Tabathani, if you want to chime in, do chime in, right? As I did when you guys were speaking, right? It's just to make it interactive. Indeed, I will start with Booking.com because, again, exactly as you said, Annie, obviously it's a known factor in Europe. You can't do without them. And the, I mean, the size of the market share that Tabata shared is just amazing. I mean, maybe some of you know that, but I worked for 5 years at their headquarters in Netherlands, right? And Booking.com would always look at Airbnb with envy and say, "Oh my God, we like Airbnb managed to bypass us and make sure we are that Booking.com is behind. We need to catch up, these kind of things." And at least in Europe, they've been smart to use their strength. And sometimes so all about knowing what you're strong at and just being even stronger where you're strong, right? Sometimes people tell you, I know it's about the part of the year we talk about good resolutions. People say you should work on your weaknesses, and sometimes actually you should work on your strength instead of what you're good at and do more of that. That's what they've been doing, seriously speaking, in Europe, right? Just making sure they have that market share, and once they got the product aligned, just like pouring money in buying traffic. And as Annie said, right, the US, well, the US, it's coming. Again, if you've been familiar with Booking.com, it always feels like next year, Booking.com is going to be big in the US. We kind of, I think I've heard this forever, right? But it's, you know, again, knowing a bit Booking.com, and if Booking.com, anybody listening, hello, it's a machine in the sense that they are relentless. They may be slow, but they're a machine. It's like a tank, and they're moving. They're moving, and they're also very good. It's maybe the Dutch culture, understanding where basically they suck at, what they suck at, right? So they know, you talk about payments, they know that people in the US were like, they tried Booking.com as a vacation rental manager, like, oh my God, so much cancellation, fraud, and chargebacks. So they had to fix the payments, right? They had the issue of awareness, right? Awareness in the sense that nobody knows the brand in the US. That I'm pushing it, right? Like there was still the perception, right? So doing, ads during the Super Bowl, that's what they're trying to do. I don't like their ads. I don't think they work. But anyway, they're serious about this. And also what's very interesting, and they're doing more, right? So next year they really want to expand a bit more in the US. They're not just going after large property managers as they did in the past. They were also going after smaller property managers and even individuals, any pockets they could find and get grabbed fast and then they will be able to turn on the marketing machine because they need enough supply in some markets to then turn on the marketing machine, marketing spend, and boom, bring you bookings. So they're willing to do that. And also another way for you to see that the US is really a priority for them is for the new features. The new features I'm going to talk about now are only available in English speaking markets, and mainly because it was for the US. So if you're in UK, you will also see this just because you happen to speak English, but they really turn it on only first for the US. It's everything that has to do with the AI or their cool, fresh stuff is only available in the US. So to signal that they really want increase the conversion of US guests. And US guests first bring book domestic, right? So for example, what they're doing, looking at my notes for this, let me close that. Yeah, so they have included now smart filters when people are searching. So basically what it means is that usually when you were searching for a vacation rental, for example, you would enter destination, the dates, number of people, right? So now what you can do in the US on the mobile version in the app, instead of typing, destination dates, you can type apartment or condo, Miami Beach, 4 people, pool access, and it will retrieve properties that match this natural search, right? Just like you're searching naturally, right? No, this is how you would search naturally, right? So it frees you up. So it means they've been very good at this. So what it means for you, really, really make sure on Booking.com that you do tick all the boxes. Whatever they ask you for the content score, the amenities, you really make sure you describe things really, really well because they really use that in the AI machine to then show you if you match whatever people are searching for, right? And it can be now in your PMS. We talk about next packs. I guess that's the way we're going here. Or it could be within Booking.com. But really, really make sure again that you go. I know the first thing you have to do the first week of January, you go to each of your OTA anyway, and you check whether you can't, is there any label you can get? Is there any amenities you have not checked? Because that's even more important now. It's not just because it's going to be just like something checked out across on somewhere down on the property page. No, it's actually something that's going to be used now to show you or not in the search results of somebody looking for a natural search. So just I hope it's clear enough, right? You just type whatever you want, you see this, and so it means for us, we make sure that properties are really well described. Another thing I want to mention for the AI, again, only available in English-speaking markets, mainly the US. What they do as well, they do a real-time Q&A. So basically, you go to a property page, to your listing, basically, and people can talk to the page in a way and ask stuff such as, when is there late check-in available, or do they have an EV charger, kind of things, and you get a response, right? Again, it's automation. But again, if you think about this, it means that to convert, it means you really make sure that the Q&A automation chatbot, whatever, can only retrieve content from what you ticked. So really make sure you tick the boxes, you described as much as you could what you have. As you know, in Booking.com, you can't influence the description of your property. But actually, there's so much more you can do by ticking the boxes, making sure you have the right label. And last thing I want to say, even the reviews now, what they do on the top of the property page, they basically will show you the feedback of the reviews. Basically, it's like using ChatGPT to say, hey, summarize those reviews and tell me what people actually think of this. That's what they have in place. Uh, that's again what is important to us because it means that we know it's probably a key factor to increase conversion. So they really, really want to increase conversion on the website. As you can see, they do in the US first. And on that point, if there's no question about this, I'll go to Airbnb now. Go ahead.
I did want to actually mention on the AI. So one of the things that we implemented within Next Packs is we have AI to tag photos. So you just have to have high res photos, and we have about a 90, 98, 99% accuracy rate that'll tag all your photos. So it'll know if it's a kitchen, it'll know if it's a dining room, a bedroom, a bathroom. And that's one thing that I know from my past just OTA experience where people miss the boat a lot with their content scores. And the channels look at the content scores. They're looking, are you responding to reviews? Yes, but do you have the high res photos? Do you have your descriptions? On booking.com, you can put your logo and a little bit about your property property management company, so you can have a little bit of branding on there. Are you filling these things out? And photo tagging is really important. And I actually had a meeting with Booking.com this morning, and we were joking about the number of people that don't realize that sometimes they've accidentally checked a bathroom as their hero photo. And there's nothing worse than somebody seeing a bathroom and when they're looking for a beach hotel, beach home or a ski chalet. Just check those kind of things. But the AI tagging is going to be really important, I think, moving forward, because things are moving very fast and the channels are utilizing AI to interpret what the guest is looking for and looking at, and they're going to shuffle photos around. So you want to make sure that you're tagged appropriately. So if all of a sudden it becomes really key for people to look at game rooms in a home, that you've got that tagged as a game room so you could rise in the sort.
Exactly. And I'm switching over to Airbnb, and the topic is sort of the same. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I did a short video. You can go to our YouTube channel, Rentals Club YouTube channel, showing that if you're searching the same property page, right, the same property, imagine you have a vacation rental. I showed the example. If I'm searching for as a couple, or if you're saying we're coming with the kids, the same property page, the highlights on top of the page, we say, this property is great for blah, blah, blah. The highlights will change dynamically depending on who's searching, right? I said I was coming with the kids. It's going to say, oh, it's great because it's you guys kid friendly and they have these kind of amenities for kids. It's like basically again the content of the page is changing. And as exactly as Annie said, that's on Airbnb I'm talking about, but the same thing, right? So for all these AI tools, do this crazy matching, changing the content of the page as we're searching, they need the information. You need to give this information to the OTAs, right? Again, it could be in the PMS, could be on the OTA itself, but do make sure you fill in the forms, the things, and obviously you don't want to overpromise. So don't, of course, say what you don't say that you have stuff that you do not have, but we don't do that because we're pros. But again, that's going to be that's important. So again, Airbnb, we talk about these AI tools again because the goal for even for them as well is to increase conversion, right? It's all about increasing conversion. Another one for Airbnb, we talked about this again. I did a video a couple of weeks back, was about the co-host network. So why I'm mentioning the co-host network here? If you attend a different session, we talked about this in the sense that now uh, um, people who have a listing on Airbnb can choose to be helped by a co-host, right? And this person can go from helping them with their listing up to doing the full property management service, right? The cleaning, welcoming guests, and all this, right? Why I'm mentioning this? Because it does mean if you look at Airbnb, you have to be pretty smart and make choices, right? Do you also want to be a co-host there? Do you want to use Airbnb as a source of leads? Your choice or not? Or do you, because, we heard different things. I've heard people saying I'm a co-host in the US, and what the leads we're getting is very struggling properties, and for good reasons. The property is, insert a bad word here, the property is not great. So again, think about this, but do you want to be there or not? Also, to have this in mind, in the markets where it's happening, there could be some pressure on your margins, right? It means that maybe more people are competing, competing with people who have imagine only 5 listings. You probably have a cost base that's smaller than you if you have hundreds of listings, right? Do you want to compete with this or not? Up to you, but think about this. You don't have to, but we want to look into it. Another one I want to mention as well. So we saw something that had a tremendous impact in 2024 was the fact that the superhost label, superhost, what's it label, has dropped in value. Right now, it's all about guest favorite. Guest favorite is really important, and that we know that again, it has an impact for us on property managers for several reasons. Right, it means that whenever you're searching or user is searching on Airbnb, first Airbnb is going to push guest favorite properties. Superhosts are down the line, right? So it means that even as a guest, I'm getting trained by Airbnb into only looking after guest favorite first. Number two, it's on listing level, not account level. Used to be that as a super host, we could introduce new properties and get them, ranked higher just because we were super host and we were benefiting from this. Now it's not enough, right? The property you need to be guest favorite. And of course, if you're just starting out with a property, it's kind of hard because to be a guest favorite, you need a certain number of reviews, which you don't have if you're starting out. So it's increasing the pressure. And also, Superhost is calculated every quarter. Guest favorite status is calculated every day. Every day. So it means that basically things are not stable, keeping on your toes. That's what Airbnb wants. But it means again it's very very interesting what's happening here, and it's only increasing, right? The idea for Airbnb is to say they have so many listings, they want to help people find the good ones in a way, increasing the quality, but also a way in a way to increase the pressure on prices for you to price down on Airbnb to lower your prices because in the end, as you know, part of your review score is the value for money, which is price. So it's very interesting what's happening here. Okay, so it does mean you have to make a choice as well. We all know sometimes it's on your strategy. Some people may choose to have markups on different channels, and maybe I can talk about this with Annie. That's a good one, right? Markups. For example, in Europe, um, there's no choice. If you're an Airbnb as a property manager, you must pay 15% to Airbnb. Is it still the case in the US that people can still only pay 3% even the property managers are not any connected? Is it still the case?
Yes, it is. Actually, there was some debate about that at Darm last week, so I did confirm that with the Airbnb folks. Yeah, so they, you still get the lower margin here in the US. So I was actually answering somebody in the chat about they had sold some rooms. It said that the rooms went quickly on booking.com and they were at a discount. Well, I would say absolutely don't be discounting your properties. And if you're in Hawaii, you could likely put a little bit of a markup because Hawaii is a big demand market. But if your rooms are moving quicker than your direct, then you're priced too low, and you need to make sure that you're keeping in tune with what the market is. And if all of your reservation, all your properties get booked up really quickly, that's an indication of your price too low. So yeah, I think that each channel you need to take a look at. Make sure that your pricing strategy is one that you can stomach at the end of the year, that you're not eroding too much of your revenue. But the nice thing in the US is Airbnb is still one of the most cost effective channels. I know it's frustrating for some, but it is a very cost effective channel at 3%.
Exactly, right. So if you're European, you hear this, yes. In the US, you only pay 3% if you're a property manager versus 15 again, which may again talk to what we talk about market share, right? Right? Booking.com comes to the US, you probably gonna have to pay 12 to 15%, if not more. And then Airbnb makes you pay 3%. So it does show the barrier you have, where Booking.com has to enter the US, right, on the cost front. But they're smart enough to be flexible in some cases. I'll just say that. Just saying. Um, so, and we talk about cities. What's important as well is so the big thing for Airbnb as well to understand is that there's a risk of distraction, right? What they said starting 2025, they will launch at least two new verticals, two new industries where they're going to enter. For example, they may be entering car sharing next year. That's what I read last year from Brian Chesky. Um, so who knows what they're going to launch, but it does mean that short-term rentals, which is the core, stays the core, but they're adding more things. So it's going to be interesting to see because in a way, what are they going to present at some point on the homepage? Like for a while, they were presenting experiences, and they were presenting like on the homepage, presenting unique places, icon places you can book for one night. So it does mean at some point the space they have, we have to compete for different categories. So let's see what it means. I don't think it will mean that short-term rentals will go down in terms of number of bookings, but it could be a distraction for Airbnb in terms of like what they're doing, how they're ramping up. So let's see what it means for us, which does mean again, don't just bet on one channel because you never know what can happen. I think they're very smart, but think about this. Another one I want to mention now, because we've got 2 minutes left for myself, 5 minutes for the Q&A, is Vrbo. Interesting move. I know what you think about this, Tabitha and Annie. Like Vrbo has added more than 1 million listings from the urban markets. So basically, to let's say what they did, they got listings from Expedia that they added, boom, like this to Vrbo. A lot of them were apart hotels, for example, honestly. But it does mean that Vrbo now is also able to compete in urban markets, which was basically something they were usually only available in very strong in traditional vacation rental markets. Airbnb has been growing there. And now they're going back in urban centers. Again, where also booking is strong. So that's interesting. It does mean that it does mean probably that booking, Vrbo is going to start buying traffic for cities as well. So if you have apartments in city centers in the US, you may think about again at looking at Vrbo again next year. with different eyes. And I would be curious to see, let us know whether you're going to get more traffic. Um, and that's pretty much it I want to cover, right? So basically, they're really trying to leverage what they did with Expedia, and I think it's always a bit complicated to understand. But if I'm correct, some verbal listings now also visible on Expedia, even though they're managed from Verbo, and they're also visible on Expedia, which was the case before. Now they say it's new. I was a bit confused. I don't know if you have any clarity on this, Annie, what they're doing here, but what I'm hearing is that. They try to give more exposure to the board listings, but also making them visible on Expedia. But all vacation rentals have to be managed from Vrbo.
Vrbo. Yeah. So they actually have some gray area there. So if you operate in a condo market or some of these leisure urban destinations. So Myrtle Beach is a great example. Miami, Destin, Florida, Gulf Shores, Alabama. Those markets have a lot of high-rise condominiums. So there's depth of inventory. So if you have a building that has, some of these buildings have upwards of 700 units in a building, and there's like, maybe 6 or 7 room types. So a manager could potentially have 100 rooms and 3 different room types, and you can kind of group them together and use that as like a hotel style listing. Expedia will take those. So as long as you can have depth of inventory in a listing, they will allow you to list direct on Expedia. So if you have the opportunity to do that, I always suggest that, because in those depth of inventory buildings, they will move better on a hotel style platform than they will if you're trying to do individually. Also, if you look at VRBO or even Airbnb in markets where there's a lot of condominium product, hotel product, there's so many listings that the consumer gets sort of they just get mind numbed by the number of listings that they have to go through to find what they're looking for. So a lot of times they'll revert back to that hotel style listing to find exactly, because they probably know, I'm going to this market, I want to stay in this particular area within this market, and maybe at 1 or 2 of these condo buildings, and they'll go through the condo buildings to look at it. So it really just is about having somebody at your channel manager or at your channel partner who can help coach you on the best way to do your listings to optimize conversion.
I love that, right? Because, for example, Booking.com is amazing about hotels, condo buildings, because Booking.com, coming from the hotel world, is really good at selling several, accommodation types or volumes of accommodation in one building. So, and all the reviews get aggregated on that property level. So, indeed, it's really, really important you talk to your PMS or to whoever is handling this to understand whether you can replicate that and how do you set it up. It's very, very important because it's a key factor. And again, as we just heard, right, from Verbo and the rest, there's something happening in urban markets. They do realize that, especially, for example, with regulations, right? Some people have to get hotel licenses now. So it looks like these form of buildings, apart hotels, condo buildings, whatever we call them, service apartments, they just they're easier because you could get a commercial license in a way and avoid some kind of regulations. So that's also why the OTAs want to go after them, because that's looks like some supply that's a bit more to stay and can resist some bans. Hopefully, it's so. Oh, again, things are not static. So really talk to your friends, to your associations, to your PMS, go to events. It's so important. Are there a couple of more things to add or questions to take, Tabitha or Annie
I think
here?
there was one person who had a comment in the chat about their booking channels in Europe. So, booking.com being the most popular, followed by Airbnb, and then very poor performance with Vrbo. So I think that goes back to us talking about, exactly what Annie was just mentioning about like booking.com. They're really good with the condos, apartments, because they have that hotel background. Then you look at Airbnb. Airbnb really attracts those smaller groups. Smaller properties are trying to expand now. Like we have the data to prove that they're looking into more like 5+ bedroom types of properties. But if you look at Vrbo has those bigger stays. So unless you have those bigger stays within Europe, they don't perform as well on Vrbo. It's just the history of, what their inventory has looked like. Vrbo usually has longer length of stay, larger booking windows. They book larger groups. So again, it's just kind of understanding your inventory that way. I also saw somebody else's comment of Booking.com, like why so popular in Europe, or why not just Booking.com, the OTAs in Europe. If you think about it, like in comparison to direct bookings, which key data clarifies as your website. So direct bookings through your website. A lot of the websites in the US aren't friendly to changing the language based on
Yeah.
language or currency. The OTAs do that for you. So it's why the OTAs are so heavily relied upon in Europe. And obviously like very relied upon in the US. But we have a more common language here. Everybody else speaks, three languages plus English. It's a little bit different in Europe. So I just wanted to provide an explanation of why that might be when you're seeing the huge difference of how the market share of direct bookings in the US versus Europe.
Yeah, and adding to this, that Booking.com has almost a monopoly in the U in Europe in terms of hotels,
Hmm.
hotel bookings. Been very strong, and it means as well that they've been able basically to um, introduce vacation rentals to their hotel bookers in a way, right? People booking hotels. So they're very good at introducing, making hotel people booking hotels, helping them discover vacation rentals, which is very, very, very interesting. And we know, right? We do stay in hotels. We're vacation rental professionals. We do stay at hotels from time to time. It's not taboo. So so they're good at this. Very, very good at that. And right. Something also somebody was asking, maybe Annie, that would be last question to cover. Is Vrbo the same as Expedia? So Vrbo is part of Expedia group, but can you explain again, how that works? Because I think it's very tricky, even for me sometimes to follow what's happening. If I'm listing the Vrbo, somebody's complaining that their listing was in Vrbo, has been moved to Expedia, photos are all wrong, and it's just scary to hear this. Have you heard these kind of things first with Expedia and Vrbo?
I haven't heard the content piece. I have heard people say, "Oh, my listing's gone." So if you don't have a direct contract with Expedia, there's no guarantee that your listing will appear on their site. So what you should think of it as is Vrbo is a cousin, and they're going to borrow the cousin's inventory whenever they run out of their contracted inventory in a market. So you could potentially be last served in that market if you're depending on getting on Expedia. So again, it's about knowing what your inventory style is and what channel is best suited for that. If you're a beach home, in the Outer Banks, North Carolina, absolutely you're going to go on Vrbo. Expedia will pull it over when they don't have hotels available. But you want to be on the Vrbo platform. But if you have condominium product, you want to do both if you can. I mean, that's what I would suggest.
Well, thanks so much. Thank you so much for everyone for attending. We passed the time, and there's still 80 of you. Thank you so much. But as usual, so as you know, this is recorded. You can get a recording. We turn this into a takeaway articles. I want to thank Tabitha. I want to thank Annie. And a lot of people actually want to reach out to you, Annie and Tabitha. So, Annie, first, what's the best way to be able to know more about next pack, so to contact you?
So I did pop my email address in the chat, but it's annie.holcomb@nextpacks.com. Also, if you're pretty active, I'm on LinkedIn all the time, every day. I'm very active there, so you can reach out. And then our website is nextpacks.com.
Fantastic. Thank you, Annie. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Tabitha, how about you? If people want to know more about key data or contact you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll pop my email in the chat as well. It's kind of a mouthful. Thanks to Key Data for having the longest name ever. But yeah, you can just reach out to me and I can connect you if you are interested in looking what's specifically happening in your market. I can connect you with that expert in your individual market, or just visit our website and you can get a demo of the dashboard if that's something you want, or again, looking at your market data. So a few ways to reach out to us.
All right. And I see comments here saying obrigado, merci, mahalo, thank you. Well, thank you all again. That was the last
Thank you.
session. I wish you great, happy holidays. It's very important. Do take time to talk, to see your friends, family. It's the right time of the year. Or just, contact us on LinkedIn, as Annie said. Annie, we're pretty active on LinkedIn. If you want to
Mhm.
talk with someone, we're there. Again, thank you so much, and you guys have a great holidays and see you next year. Take care.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a good one.